Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And if I read it correctly on Reddit, it looks like we had a pretty wild ride for Plex in the last week or so, with the bidding happening for the Alliance Tournament auction, and then CCP coming out with a Plex sale right after that. So it should be interesting. Let's take a seat and then let's head right into the market. So sitting down, opening the market window, and as always we will start with Plex. That would be at 40 seconds. Okay, and let's get started. So Plex at 936 million, someone just brought in 22 of them at 927 million. I do think that these will get snagged up pretty quickly. Personally, I think that those are already starting to look pretty interesting. What is a little bit weird is that the buyers have stayed above or just above 900 million. So if you want to pick up some Plex below 900 million, you're going to have a much more difficult time. The chart should be interesting, and it is. So last week we were up to 964 million during EVE Talk, which was doing quite alright for people that had invested below or at around 900 million, which you could have done, and I bought a few of those. But we clearly have a serious pullback now. So a major driving force of the increase in price here has been the auction for the Alliance Tournament. And the breaking point has probably been the Plex sale that CCP just started, a summer Plex sale, where you can see now median daily average is just above 900 million. So this is seriously going to pull back. It's going to be interesting to see how long the Plex sale is going to last, and then of course what Plex are going to do after that. But yeah, 936 million, 927 million, I think, and as you can see, one already got picked up here. I think those will be gone pretty quickly. But those are, I personally feel, still decent prices to jump into. Now, a request that I got as well on last week's EVE Talk was to show sales or Plex sales in some of the citadels that are around the trade hubs. Now, I can't do all of those. That would mean that I would have to have extra alts in all the other trade hubs, but I can get rid of the zero range filter and show you what's happening around here in Jita. So you have a perimeter called Defenders Needed that is selling Plex quite actively and going from 935.5 million to 928 million. So someone jumped just below those with the sell order here. I think that's basically the aim. Someone must not have had a Jita filter on and thus tried to undercut those by around 1 million. They'll get sold pretty damn quickly. The buyers though, 900 million, so it looks like buyers are still staying in the Jita station. The tax evasion citadels are a pretty interesting situation, of course, and it means that you can still pick up some extra Plexes below 930 million in that citadel, but of course you have to try to decide whether or not it's worth the risk, because of course the citadel can get taken down, and you would need to try to sell it there as well. So you can see that you can still sell at a better price in Jita Station itself. Maybe I'll try to look for something to do with all of the citadels that have been set around the different market hubs, but for now just a quick look at what is happening with Plex. So you can clearly see that there are some lower sell orders which people can afford to still do and still get a profit out of those Plexes because of the lower taxes, but I do think that the volumes are much higher right here in the Jita station, and the majority of the trades are still happening here. And from time to time someone does make a bit of a mistake, like the person dumping 22 stocks below the perimeter, the citadel price, which tend to get snagged up pretty quickly because in Jita you have to buy this, pay this almost 10 million ISK premium for the taxes. On Plexes, that is. It depends on the good, of course. But yeah, bit of a bumpy ride here for Plexes in the last week or so because of the tournament bidding and because of the Plex sale that just started, which is of course going to increase supply. The multiple pilot training certificate going for 1.1 billion. That is interesting. Buyers at 920 million. Let's take a look. Volumes went up and are going down now, but went up to above 1 billion on the chart as well with the 5-day moving average. So this one is still under pressure. I do think that as the Plex sale has its impact on the Plex market itself, by next week the trading certificate will be forced to catch up as well, because these basically do the same thing, or almost the same thing. Plexes are actually a bit more useful than the multiple pilot trading certificate, so this should correct quite heavily. If you want to take a little bit of profit and you happen to have bought a few of these close to 900 million, you should probably try to take that profit right now. I will quickly touch on this, but as you can see again in the citadels, there's only 2 of them for sale, and they're actually very close in price. So it seems like the volumes just aren't there yet in the citadel that is close to Cheetah, and that you need extremely high volume goods such as plexes for people to actually try to start to create a market in citadels. It's just not happening yet. Maybe when contracts are launched for citadels, things might change a little bit, which should be in the August release. So that could be interesting as well. Next up, we've got the body resculpt. We're pretty much empty of those, so we should see a price spike. Yes, we do. And this is the danger with a small unique market like this one. Of course, volumes, you can see daily volumes, maybe 5 or 6 of them. That means that a single individual can very easily buy out the entire market, try to release a few at a very high price, and just try to manipulate the price. I do think it's just a matter of a little bit of patience, because you can of course create these from Aurum, I think, and as a result it should get filled up with people spotting that opportunity. But it is such a low volume market that it is not tied very closely to Plex, and it's not easy to predict the body resculpt market. Next up, the skill extractors. That could be a bit more interesting. We are seeing the same bump as the Plex prices, but also the same recovery as with the plexes as well. So that correlation is extremely strong between plexes and the skill extractors. They're currently selling for 219 million, volume still extremely high. Look at that, still hundreds upon hundreds of them being brought in every 24 hours. That just stays really high. The buyers are at 210 million, is not giving too much ground just yet. And then the skill injectors also having to retrace a little bit of their winnings, so they went up to almost 630 million, 625, something like that. What's interesting is that the increase in Plex and extractor prices have merely stalled the decrease in price for skill injectors, and now we're going down towards 600 million, so we are talking 614 million for the sellers, volumes still pretty high, and 590 million for the buyers. Honestly, buying skill injector for 600 million I think is not a bad deal if you look at the rest of the chart here. Although for 10% you would need 660 million, which we've not hit in a while. So if you want to try for 590, maybe even 580, it is still a possibility. We'll need to see if this decrease in price continues, as I'm guessing more and more people have completely filled up alts the way they want to, and this demand for these skill injectors may actually be under pressure a little bit because of the lower activity. It is summertime. I don't think that many people, compared to high activity months, create new alts and want to get new alts up and running during the summer. It's usually the opposite. So okay, skill injectors under pressure a little bit. I would say plexes, if you can afford them and if you can try for a few buy orders, maybe that's still a pretty good deal, because you can probably pick them up close to 900 million. And skill injectors are under pressure. It may be a bit too soon to buy, and you can see from the median daily averages that we apparently are on our way back up just a little bit at the tail end here, but maybe on the buy orders here again below 600 million, it could still be an interesting investment for the medium future. The aim probably winter, something like that. Next up, some minerals. Let's take a look at those. 935. Alright, and let's get started as always with titanium, which unfortunately is dropping quite severely. On the chart we're heading towards 540. 5.4 ISK, I mean, and yeah, that's definitely not looking too good. This does look a bit like a serious trend break. You can see that over 6 months we've slowly been going down. We tried to stay above 6 ISK for a while in the first 4 months, then we had to give ground here, try to stay above 580 for a bit, try to stay above 560 for a bit, actually rebounded, but now this does look like a pretty sharp drop off. So let's see if we can spot anything in the orders, sell orders that could indicate this. So new sell orders, a full front page, anything that stands out. We do have this 1.8 billion units being sold at 5.8 ISK, which should put some pressure on that. We still see a billion coming in here as well. And the rest, well, a little bit smaller in volumes. For the buyers, well, we don't see that many very recent buy orders. We do see 2 billion units being bought at 526, but we don't see like a full front page of new buy orders, and as a result, despite the fact that the volumes seem to be lower, we are probably still in an oversupply situation for titanium, and we've had to give ground 555 for the latest sell order, which is starting to be in a price range where I don't like it anymore for high-sec mining. I definitely think that you're better off mining other stuff than feldspar, because even other ores are still yielding you titanium, and at this point, especially if you look at the tail end of the chart here, I'm gonna start just stacking my titanium, probably moving it to a trade hub and wait for a better sell opportunity. Above 6 ISK should be possible, which is almost 10% more than what you're getting now, which you'll get your taxes out of a trade like that. And then close to 657 is actually possible, historically speaking. So I'm not liking the current price range anymore, and I think I'm gonna start to withhold my titanium sales. For pyrite, let's take a look at that. Definitely not looking too good either. In fact, 6-month low on the chart right here, heading towards 9.0 ISK, and the sellers are at 925, the buyers are at 898. They're trying to actually buy pyrite below 9 ISK, which I think is not bad if you want that investment once again. But as someone that does a decent amount of mining, I think again for pyrite, I'm gonna start holding off from selling, stacking some stocks up, probably in trade hubs, so I'll need to do a little bit of transportation, yeah, just wait for a better sell opportunity. Just look at the 6-month chart. It makes very little sense to dump your pyrite at 9 ISK if you have the luxury of waiting. Next up, we've got Mixalon. That is, yeah, finally forced to give ground. I was expecting this to happen weeks sooner. If you look at the pressure that pyrite was under, if you look at the pressure that titanium was under, Mixalon had a really good run, still holding at 74 ISK for like 2 months. More than 2 months straight. It was definitely the winner of the high-sec minerals, but now we can clearly see that that trend has been broken, with a median daily average going below 70 ISK already on the chart here. So currently sellers are at 71.03 ISK, buyers are at 67.22, and if you look at these median daily averages, it's pretty obvious that it's buy orders that are getting filled as well and that are not getting replenished. So oversupply situation, Mixalon under pressure. I think we'll dip below 70 ISK pretty quickly, and I would not be surprised if we're going all the way down towards 60 ISK because of how low pyrite, titanium, and probably isogen are as well. So yeah, Mixalon, it was the time to sell like a few weeks ago, as I've said that people should probably look into doing, because this correction here was not unexpected at all. Next up here, we've got isogen. Again, definitely not looking like a healthy chart if you're looking to sell, because we are once again hitting a 6-month low point at 84 ISK on the chart for the 5-day moving average. We in fact also have a median daily price of 80 ISK right here on the chart. So isogen is currently selling for 84.34, which is even below the current, which is 84 right here, pretty much on the chart. And then the buyers are at 80 ISK, pretty much 79.96, 80.2. So people are already trying to buy isogen below 80 ISK. Now investors may swoop in with some pretty big volumes all of a sudden if they do want to invest in all of this stuff, which could give a temporary bump. But once again, for Isogen, my personal feeling is I'm not going to sell any Isogen that I make. At this point, I'd rather stock it up and wait for another sell opportunity. If at the moment you're selling close to 80 ISK, and you can see that there's been 100 ISK prices as well in the last 6 months, it makes no sense to me, again, if you can afford to wait, that is, to not take that 20% profit when Isogen makes a comeback. So yeah, for me, for Isaac Minerals, it's definitely become the time to stop selling and to start stockpiling, to start having those investments ready. I'm probably going to stockpile the Isaac Minerals, maybe still sell a little bit of Mexalon, because 70 ISK is still a decent price. This is the only exception that I would say. If you're still selling here on the way down, I think it's still understandable. And then I would start to invest some ISK in probably some of the Nullsic minerals. Let's take a look at Noxium to start here. Also again, 440 on the chart, median daily average is at 430. So this is pretty obvious that demand is dropping out. The buyers are at 410 ISK for Noxium. If you want to build up some stocks of that, I think it's absolutely understandable as well. Although, of course, Noxium historically at such a low price that I can still consider that slightly risky. But yeah, since I'm in general going to start building up my stocks, I'm going to add Noxium to that list as well, especially since we're once again heading for a 6-month low. So 440 on the 5-day moving average, 438 for the sellers already, and still more than a half a front page coming in, including 17.8 million units of Noxium being sold straight on the market below 440 ISK. That should stop this a little bit from bouncing back too hardly, unless someone decides, you know what, below 440, that's actually still a pretty decent price for Noxium. If demand picks back up, I'm gonna buy all of that. Still, one thing to keep in mind, we've been meandering in this trade range for quite a bit. This is not a clear 6-month low on the chart like what you see for Isogen, like what you see for Pyrite. Nope, this is basically a normal price, as Noxium has been oversupplied for probably a year by now. Yeah, for an entire year by now. And so on the 1-year chart, we're still at a pretty low point. But it seems like there are just too many sources of Noxium in the game at the moment, whether it's from Nullsic, Wormhole Space and Highsec, to actually see this one bounce back substantially all of a sudden. Still, it's on charts like these where a complete trend break can happen, especially if CCP decides to change something. That's where you can make some really big money. So having some stocks of Noxium, I do think makes sense. And then for the Nullsic ones, we know that Zydrine was under pressure last week, and it still is. This is amazing, actually dropping off towards 1000 ISK already. I think that this is starting to be investment worthy as well. 981 ISK for the buyers, 1027 ISK for the sellers. That's a pretty sharp drop off that we're seeing right here. I would call this a buy opportunity, and I am going to jump in on this. In fact, in the last week, I've made around 1.2 billion ISK just selling stuff from the corporation and with my blueprint copies. I was thinking of holding all of that back in preparation of the blueprints for the new structures, but nope, I'm definitely going to invest a chunk of that money into Zydrine. It just doesn't make sense not to, since once again Zydrine here hitting a 6-month low, and you can see that 1250, 1300 is not outside the realm of possibilities for reselling that. 30% profit, I'll take that. And then next up is Megasite, which was under pressure a little bit last week, but is still hesitating. So Megasite is staying pretty strong at 1300, 1336 for the sellers, 1200 for the buyers, starting to be pretty interesting as well on the buy order side. I would understand if you would wait on this though. Wait a couple weeks, see if the general pressure in the mineral market also translate in lower Megasite prices, and then maybe make your move on that one. But Zydrine for me is basically a no-brainer. So pretty interesting. Mineral market in general seriously under pressure. This in my opinion is because we are at the peak of summer, right? July, August, and as a result there is just less activity in the game. There is a lot less demand in the game. Because of that, people don't blow up as many ships, so they don't need to replace as many ships, and this is, in my opinion, a really good opportunity to move in and start building up some stocks whether it is for sale, whether it is for use later on, and I'm definitely planning to do that myself. Morphite here also dropping back, interesting, median daily price below 10k as well, so this could be interesting too. Buyers though, 10,165 ISK, a decent buy order coming in here as well. Sellers dropping below 11,000 ISK though, supply coming in decently strongly in the last 2 days. So again, just with just like with Megasite, with Morphite, maybe on some buy orders, but if you want to wait a few weeks, then maybe you'll spot a better opportunity. That remains a gamble, but considering the other opportunities that I'm already spotting, right here, 6-month low, right here, 6-month low, I would say don't dump all your ISK into this, right? I'm definitely not doing that at all, but also keep a little bit of powders dry, maybe to jump on a Megasite opportunity and a Morphite opportunity. But yes, the buy orders, the buy opportunities in minerals, in my opinion, are clearly forming here. Next up, Tech One chips. Let's take a look at the impact on that. 2040. Here we go. I'm still going to use the normal set here, guys. Someone asked why am I choosing the Armageddon and not some of the other Amar battleships. It's just because I know the Armageddon, and I had a pretty decent fight with the Armageddon, and so as a result it came on the list first, and I just never really switched to that. I'll think about switching it up a little bit, but there's just even more work to do. For this EVE talk, it's just not gonna happen. So let's start here with the Armageddon. Together with minerals, you can see the 6-month pressure. 190 million ISK seems to be the current price. So sellers 193 million, buyers 182 million. This again, you could make a move on this, but one thing to keep in mind is that battleships have not been in the meta at all in the last wars, in probably the last year or so. So this remains a pretty risky investment, but we are seeing a bit of pressure, probably from the mineral pressure, starting to build up here as well. So Armageddon, decently low price. If you want to pick a few up, I don't think you're making a mistake. As an investment in Tech One ships, I'd be wary of that. Next up, we've got the Caracal, just hovering at 11.5 to 12 million ISK, which is, you know, decently stable, just staying right here. Availability, I think, is pretty decent. Yeah, not too high, but during the summer, this is pretty normal. So 12 million for the sellers, 10.5 million for the buyers, pretty much for a Caracal. And somewhere in between that, people are basically buying them. These are pretty cheap cruisers, of course, decent PvP platforms as well, that are often flown in big nullsec fleets. So investment in this, personally, I don't think so, because it's too many people have the ability to produce these with maximum material efficiency, but it just shows stability in the Tech One market. Next up here, we've got the Cofter, comes off of a little bit of a bump up towards 36 million. I think that this was speculation on the rebranding of the mining ship, so they'll get a little bit of a visual update normally in the August release. And so I think some people basically saw the opportunity to buy them close to 30 million ISK and said, you know what, I'm gonna purchase quite a few of them just to be ready if they increase in price seriously on fresh demand. I think it's a bit risky to do so, but a slight uptick as they come into view. Maybe some players are going to start aiming for those skill-wise, and thus you could maybe make a little bit of money on that. But you can see that the gap has been plugged very quickly. Industrialists know what's up, and as a result, we're back at 31 million again. 31 for the sellers, 29 for the buyers. Not a lot of demand for coveters at the moment. Next up here, the Dominics. Ooh, that's interesting. I think someone basically made a big mistake, because we have a single data point here, median daily average of more than 650 million. That must be a mistake. Or are we? No, we're definitely not out of Dominixes. Were we out of Dominixes? Let's take a look at this. Nope, 40 days, 53 days, these are still there. So this is probably someone making some sort of mistake, or a chart bug. That's possible as well. But Dominix is selling for 211 million, buyers are at 197 million. This doesn't seem that out of proportion. Neither do I see complete buyout, so an actual reason for this strange data point, I can't really find it, unless it happened in one of the citadels. That is a possibility. So what could have happened is that a citadel in range here sold one Dominix at this ridiculous price. That then smells like ISK laundering to me. And that this is now showing up in this chart because of that one sale or those few sales that happened. Yeah, this is actually, if that is what's happening, let's say that someone put up a citadel in range of Jita. They actually sold. It should probably be in Jita through that citadel, which can be done. Some Dominixes at a ridiculously high price as a part of RMT. Pretty much has to be as part of RMT. They would probably need to sell like 25 of them for 1.2 billion or something like that to get this daily average price, and then it shows up on the chart here. Is this what happened? I'm not entirely sure. If you think that that's a possibility, then let me know in the comments, because this is really weird, and that's pretty much the only scenario where I can imagine something like this happening. It is an RMT related sale in a citadel close to Jita. That's pretty much, or a bug, of course. A bug is possible as well. So interesting. Is something weird happening here? We'll keep an eye on that. Next up here, we've got the Drake dropping back to 53 million. Again, this looks more volatile than it is, from 53 to 58 million ISK, pretty much 52 to 58 million ISK. It is still 10%, but on average 54, 55 million for a Drake. So 57 for the sellers, 52 for the buyers. The chart is moving in between those two, and I think it's when sellers or buyers are taking the upper hand that we're averaging here. So people need to buy a lot of Drakes all of a sudden, sellers take the upper hand, price goes up on average. People are patient, and they actually want to dump some Drakes. They actually sell to more buy orders. You actually get a lower daily average. It doesn't really look like it looks more violent than it actually is. So this is just basically sellers and buyers, depending on their patience, that are dictating the price here. At least that's my read on the Drake chart. Next up here, we've got the Mauler. Let's take a look at these. Also feeling the pressure, so managed to hold on above 11.5 million is pretty handily throughout the last 6 months or so. Bit of volatility before that. We're starting to stabilize, but now we're actually going back down. And I know that there were not that many Maulers, so they must have been brought to the market pretty heavily. And now, yeah, buyers 10.5 million, sellers 12.16 million, something like that. Under pressure a little bit. There's just low demand here, so people are willing to dump some Maulers to the buyers as well, thus lowering the average price. Next up here, we've got the Myrmidon that was under some serious volatility, and as I've said, I'm reading this here as an attempt at manipulation, and I think I still think that if someone did that, they're having some really big problems selling all of their stocks. But price shooting back up a little bit. Currently sellers are at 62.8 million, buyers are at 49 million, so 62 million. Again, they are trying. I'm not seeing the big volume spike here, so there is definitely something happening in the Myrmidon market. Maybe someone is building up huge fleets of Myrmidons, that's possible as well. But this is pretty weird. Very unusual as well. It would of course mean that if you were on top of this, or if you had inside knowledge of this, you could make a decent amount of money, because if you can still buy Myrmidons at 50 million and you can sell them at 60 million, which you can do right now, in theory, then that's a lot of money to be made, of course. Next up here, we've got the Oracle, under pressure as well, heading for 75 million ISK, pretty much a 6-month low here. Currently selling for 78.5, buyers are at 72 million ISK, so we're right in between that. This again means that I think demand is slowing down, and some of the sellers just don't have the patience and are willing to sell to these buy orders, thus lowering the average prices. Next up, the Raven here, bouncing back to 190 million, which is an okay price for a Raven. So again, battleship, decent availability. There's bound to be little action going on here. It is still a good PvE ship though, so I think that at least it'll do better than some of the PvP ships at the moment. But you know, 190 million, pretty fair price. If you look at the 6-month chart, we were below that a bit, we're above that a bit, but on average 190, decently stable Raven market. Next up, the Retriever, again very low demand. Did that one spike up as well? Yes, it did, and unfortunately, you can see on the volume increase here, big increase in price from around 28 million to 29.5 million, so they didn't even manage to really do that much to the price, but industrial response probably added with the putting Retrievers back on the market for a higher price means that we're crashing below the averages. 6-month low for Retrievers at the moment, 28 million for the sellers, 25.8 for the buyers. If you want to buy a couple of Retrievers to lose in nullsec or something like that, which I do have a few of those ready in Providence space, when sometimes if I want to I can join one of their mining fleets, make a bit of money. A Retriever at the moment, I think for 28-27 million makes a lot of sense to buy a couple of them, bring them into your nullsec mining spots and just be ready so that you lose cheap ships at the moment. And next up we've got Stabbers, also breaking the averages, so going below 10.5 million on the chart. Sellers are at 10.5 million, buyers 8.5 million, so again a bit of couple sales still being done, but people willing to dump their Stabbers to the buyers as well. Very low availability here. I'm surprised. Stabber is normally a decent PvP ship, but yeah, extremely low demand, extremely low availability. Next up here, the Tornado, also starting to actually stabilize at around 74 million ISK here. Availability is pretty damn high. Buyers are at 70 million, sellers 74.4 million. Quite surprising for the ganking ship for bigger targets in EVE Online to actually stabilize, but it is happening. There's another indication that summer activity is a little bit lower, which honestly, I'm personally not too worried. We see this every summer. It is a normal trend in MMOs that during the summer activity decreases a bit. Next up, we've got a Typhoon, 180 million after managing to climb up to 200 million, had to give ground quite substantially, and now 180 million on average, 182 for the sellers, 170 for the buyers. Availability quite decent, so again a battleship, definitely not in the meta that much at the moment, and so you're able to pick up a few Typhoons on the cheap at the moment. Investment worthy, I think it's pretty risky. I'd rather go for minerals at the moment. Next up we've got the Vexor, after a bit of volatility as well, jumping up to 13.5 million a few times, jumping up to 14 million here, finally dropping off quite seriously, and going for less than 11.5 million. So 11.7 for the sellers, 10 million for the buyers, very high availability. So the Vexor, really decent PvE ship of course as well, and as a result I think is still doing a bit better than something like the Stabber, where the volumes are just gone. The Vexor is still being traded, but of course it means that it is being produced in very high numbers as well, and as a result it's going to be difficult to make money at the current in the current situation. So yeah, Tech 1 chips, you know, stability seems to be okay. I'm not spotting any really big volatilities. Affordability is pretty high at the moment, but would I risk investing in that? Honestly, I wouldn't. Next up, Tech 2. 33.15. Yeah, looks like it's gonna be a pretty long one today. I actually feel pretty relaxed and able to cover all of this in decent detail. So let's start with the Basilisk, unfortunately, right? Just look at the stability after the war and with the introduction of the new taxes, of course, and at 210 million ISK here, this is not how you're gonna make trade money. So Basilisk, unfortunately, unless it drops close to 190 million, I would say nope, not in the picture. Cerberus showed a little bit of volatility. Unfortunately, it bounces back down to 210, then it bounces back up to 220, so you're not gonna make trade money on that, and it is staying at this price range. So what we did see is that we saw data points heading towards 200 million, finally unleashing some volatility, and this here is about a 25% increase in price. You could have made some money on this at least, but you can see that it is very slow, a bit slower to increase in price here, and it was after 2 months of stability. So I think the new pattern in the Tech 2 market, if you're looking for trades, are slowly decreasing prices, where you do finally see a historically low bottom, 200 million for Cerberus, although we've been way below that before. Then you can pull the trigger, try to buy a couple on buy orders, which should be a bit lower than that once again, and then hope for volatility, which is mostly going to be null-sec action related. The claw here next, dropping below 20 million on the chart, but it did so before. I would prefer to see the chart closer to 18 million. Buyers are still at 18.6, sellers are at 19.4. This big quantity here could help the claw slowly go down, down, down. If the buyers are also going down below 18 million, I would say yes, maybe you could purchase a couple of claws, but when we're seeing this chart here, nope, it's not the time to trade these. The Guardian next, a bit of lag here, bit of market lag, yep. Went up in price substantially. Unfortunately, this is not really what we want to see if we want to actively trade in this ship. So we did spot that buy opportunity below 130 million after a bit of stability. Obviously a good time to buy a couple Guardians, but the bad news is it took more than a month to reach the high price of 210 million. Take your profits here, sure. Unfortunately now we're giving ground very slowly, hesitatingly, just like here, still hovering at 180, 170 million ISK. If you want to buy at 130, you're gonna wait a very long time for that. And so yeah, the extreme volatility of the Tech 2 markets, honestly, it does look like that in the past because of the new taxes. And thus investments in Tech 2 are much more driven by buy opportunities like the Hound here, right? Chart heading finally towards 18 million, which historically is a pretty good price. Buyers at 17 million. If you want to put some aggressive buy orders, 17.5, 17.6, you're gonna pick up some Hounds below 18 million. Look at the rest of the chart, short 21, 22 million. Definitely not outside the range of the possibilities, but how long will you have to wait? You'll have to wait in all likeliness for a null-sec war to explode. Next up here, the Ishtar. Again, slow increase in price from below 170 to 210. Then here a bit of volatility, but staying from 210 to 240 million. It's very risky to make a move on this, and now finally breaking back below 210 million, but nowhere close to the previous buy opportunity. So nope, the Ishtar, I definitely don't like where this chart is. I wouldn't move in on this. The Manticore next, also heading towards 22 million. This is probably okay. Still 21.5 million for the buyers, 22.8 million for the sellers. A bit too close for comfort. I'd like to see it drop even further back down, but you can buy below 22 million, which considering the rest of the chart is not bad. So stealth bombers are coming into a more interesting territory, except for the Nemesis here, still holding well above 22 million. Buyers 19 million. Nope, you'd need to see that below 18 million in my opinion. So Nemesis too early to do anything. Onero's next here. Again, it's apparently in the logistics cruisers. This slow increase in price here, it is worrying if you're looking for Twitch trades, right? Again, the bottom at 140, we probably spotted that, and buying here makes absolute sense. Having to wait 2.5 months to finally reach the top at 200 million and be able to do your sale is not what we're used to in the Tech 2 market. Then giving ground, but already working its way back up. Honestly, 165 million, I would never have called this a buy opportunity. So on this increase in price, I think it was just too risky to actually make the move on this. Next up here we get the Purifier, still at 20 million. So buyers are at 18.5. Again, I'd like to see that below 18 million. So I'd say it's still too early. Next up we've got the Raptor. Again, don't like this. Just look, it's a bit of volatility, but going from 24 to 26 million, that's not worth it. Dropping back down to 22 million for just a moment and then already back up. So just meandering here in this price range. I don't see enough volatility to be able to sell at a really good profit. I don't see low enough prices to be able to buy and actually position yourself to at least have a chance if it does happen. And then finally here the Scimitar. still holding at 155 million. Again, the meandering at a high price range, historically speaking, means that, in my opinion, it's very risky to trade in the scimitar at the moment. So I'm seeing a couple of buy opportunities, right? The Hound starts to look interesting, Manticore starts to look interesting, but other than that, nope. Tech 2 markets, I'm staying clear of that one. Next up, the Tech 3 market at around, well, let's pretty much call it 39.45. Let's take a look at these. Confessor here first, 44 million. So Confessor went as low as 40 million, worked its way back up a little bit, but now is hesitating. Let's see if the pressure is from supply. And yes, it is still 36 of those being sold at 45 million, buyers at 42. So we crawled out of the hole a little bit, but 1,000 of them at 47 million is going to keep the price of Confessors in check for the foreseeable future here. So I think there's fewer of them or less. Fewer, I think, that have been brought to the market in the last few days, but the pressure is still clearly showing on this chart. We're not breaking out anytime soon. Next up here, we've got the Hecate. Let's take a look at that chart. Yeah, the Hecate broke out to 50 million, and as a response, we're already going back down towards 46 million. And this is the response, of course. You get half a front page, including 34 and 48 Hecates being brought to the market, competing for those prices above 45 million, and the pressure is back on already, which partly, of course, explains why there are not that many Confessors coming in, because people can bring in Hecates at a slightly better price, about $1 million more. Next up here we get the Jackdaw. I actually bought a couple of those, but the chart is still at 38 million, so interesting. 35.6 million for the buyers, 39 million for the sellers. Still we have a couple of Jackdaws coming in here in the last 24 hours, 100 of them being sold at 39 million or just below that. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, the Jackdaw is clearly oversupplied, under pressure, 6-month low prices, less than 40 million. I already bought a decent amount of these, so for the amount of ISK that I've got in them, I'm pretty happy. I'm gonna wait for a sell opportunity on those. I think I'll look for minerals this week, but if you want to invest in some of these Tech 3 ships that are extremely oversupplied at the moment, I'll grant you that it is slightly risky because you don't know how long the situation is going to last. On the other hand, being able to buy some of these advanced destroyers below 40 million, below 38 million at the moment, right, 35.6 million, I think is almost a no-brainer. And for like 5-10 of these, it just makes little sense not to pull the trigger. And then finally we've got the Zwepel, who is also still holding just below 44 million. Supply on this one, still alive with about, well, it took 2 days to fill half a front page, but with 84, 18, 17, 13 and 27 of them, 72 of them coming in at 43.3 million. That is of course again going to stop the price from going up and showing the oversupply situation. If you look at the rest of the chart as well here, it's pretty obvious that we are at pretty low points, and then the Hecate went up a little bit, but is already being squashed quite actively by fresh supply. Next up, the cruisers here. The Legion also tried to go back up a little bit, but still under pressure, heading towards 140 million once again. Buyers 137, sellers 144. Not that much fresh supply coming in though, so that has clearly slowed down. Next up, we've got the Loki, went up to 150, slightly under pressure. New supply, not that much, but yeah, 46, 85, 40, 10 is a bit of a problem. That's something that will take some time for the market to digest, thus putting a serious cap on the price. Next up, we've got the Proteus, again very similar. After reaching a very low price close to 130, we crawled out of that a little bit, but now the pressure is back on. Fresh supply, actually pretty decent, half front page, just not that big in volumes. We still have 26 of them 2 days ago though. And then finally we've got the Tengu, obviously under pressure, in fact going back to 140 million. So 138.5 for the buyers, 143 for the sellers. All of this, yeah, here is where the oversupply has struck. On the opportunity to still sell at 160, people brought in too many Tengus. They're forced to sell by low volumes, but in many sell orders competing with each other, 0.1 isking each other. I think if you're looking for a cruiser investment, Tengus below 140 million are obviously a possibility at the moment, and I think historically will make you some decent money. Still, again, the risk is that it could take a very long time for you to actually make money on this. But I think Tengus this week, if you want to buy a couple of those, I think that does make a lot of sense. And then finally, for the extra material this week, 44.45. I'm just going to touch on the isotopes. We're quickly going to take a look at these. Helium isotopes come from ice mining. We did have the new ice mining frigate. Honestly, I don't think we'll see a major impact from that. But I think what's more important is that, of course, all of these new structures are going to use all the fuels. Just like the citadels can use any fuel type. And so what I'm personally expecting is to see a bit of a harmonization in the isotopes, because there's very little reason to buy a more expensive fuel when you can buy a more a cheaper one that will still work for you. So I think that this should start to harmonize a little bit. So isotopes, helium isotopes now, after reaching a 6-month low below 620, are now back up to 680 ISK. Yeah, availability should be pretty decent. So let's remember 6-month low a couple months ago, and then 680 at the moment. Hydrogen, also a 6-month low, but back up to 700. So what you can see here is that we didn't dip that low in the hydrogen isotopes. We crawled back out, so we see the same pattern, but 700 is here, 680 is here, pretty close to one another. Next up here, we've got nitrogen isotopes dipping back down to 6-month low here again at 780, and still here at 800 ISK. So, still more expensive than the other ones, interestingly enough. And then here we get oxygen isotopes, again 6-month low reached a couple of months ago, close to 670, but yeah, trying to stay in this trade range, right? Crawling out a little bit, already giving back ground, so 680 again. I think that the new structures are going to harmonize isotope prices and fuel prices. One thing that could be why nitrogen isotopes are higher than the rest is because of supercapital fuel. I do think isotopes are used in those ships, and as a result, maybe the more popular racial supercapitals could still command a premium on some of these isotopes. I'll touch on the fuels as well. Let's take a look at these here. Helium fuel cells, completely different picture. Low point a few months ago, but here helium going up to 21,000 ISK. In a couple of pretty big spurts up. Hydrogen fuel blocks, 21.5 thousand ISK in a couple of sprints up. A low point here. Nitrogen fuel blocks, 24,000 ISK. So this is a real surprise to me. Although it will take some time, of course, people are still using POSs actively at the moment. And nitrogen is winning out in the isotopes as well. And then oxygen fuel cells, 21,000 ISK. So I'm starting to see this a little bit. We can really see that helium, hydrogen and oxygen have harmonized pretty heavily. You see the same patterns coming, and you see similar prices in all of them. Nitrogen fuel blocks and nitrogen isotopes are still commanding a premium for some reason. I honestly think that this is going to decrease more and more as people switch to the new structures and have less reason to actually go for a specific fuel block. It's going to show up in fuel blocks at first, and then I think the harmonized demand is also going to have its impact on the isotopes later on. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on this, but I think if you want to start to stack up some fuel blocks for your structures in the near future, then you can just go for the cheapest ones. There is no need to go for nitrogen fuel blocks if you don't have to. This is going to start to shape the market as more structures come out and as the POSs are being phased out, in my opinion. And there you go, guys. That's it for this EVE Talk. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.